All right, so I'm going to start off by introducing myself. My name is Amy Crosby, and I am the coordinator senior for graduate admissions at Arizona State University. So I work with all of our master's and PhD level students. If I'm correct, you're all currently undergraduate students at ASU, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So, so I can definitely tailor this very much to what an undergraduate student at ASU would expect to experience through an application process for a master's program. The master's and PhD program application process are very similar. So this is going to be all graduate level programs that you might be interested in. A lot of our, I shouldn't say a lot, some of our programs, PhD programs do allow for students to apply to a PhD level program right after finishing a bachelor's. It's not always a guarantee and it's not for everybody, but it is an option. So that is something to consider if you're looking more just skipping straight to that PhD, or if you've maybe done a 4+1 or something like that in your past, that's something that you might want to consider. So we'll talk about the grad application. This is the general grad application, which comes through my office. So Admission Services processes all of the application materials for the student. We collect all of your transcripts, all of your supplemental documents, and then we put them all into one nice neat little application packet. And then once that's complete, we pass that on to your program of interest for a review. So the grad process is very different than the undergrad process in that way. So whereas the undergrad process just has one big review committee, at the graduate level, each and every department has their very own review committee. So for instance, with engineering, SEMT has their own review committee, CD has their own review committee, SIDC, everybody has their own review committee, and they'll be evaluating each and every application separately, and they will be making your admissions decision. So it's really key to understand where the different departments play in, because it is very much a group effort. So Admission Services starts your application process by collecting the materials, processing your application, and then from there your program takes over by conducting your review and making your actual admissions decision. So for anybody who's just joined, I just wanted to mention that the chat is open, so feel free to ask any questions throughout this presentation that you might have. Oh yeah, we do have a student who's in a 4+1. Perfect. So yeah, so this is a great time for you to start thinking about if you want to do maybe another master's, who knows, or if you want to start looking into the PhD level, which is a great option for a lot of our students, because I mean you can get a bachelor's, master's, and a PhD in such a short amount of time. So I have seen some students do that, and it really just depends on your interest. So we'll go through this, and as we're going along, just send any questions my way, okay? All right, so first we're gonna go through some information about our online application, and then we're gonna move into some supplemental material information like we talked about. So the online application, those first few items you're gonna see there, that's gonna be some really common items that every student's gonna see, and then we're gonna move into the supplemental material part of the application, which are gonna be some extra items that might be required of you depending on the program that you're actually applying to. All right, so first starting off, your very first step is going to be the online application to ASU. It's very simple. It's a lot like the undergraduate application is. It's all information about yourself. So it's going to be information about, your previous education. It's going to be asking about your location, your residency, your program of choice, all those kind of good things. So the online application will be your very first step, along with the application fee. That's very different in the way that the application fee has to be paid when submitting the graduate application. It can't be paid later. The fee has to be collected as the application is submitted. So that's something you'll want to be aware of. You need to be ready to do that at the time of submission. Also, something that's unique about the graduate application is we do allow students to upload copies of their transcripts into the online application. We'll touch on transcripts a little bit more, but as an ASU student, we'll have all of your transcripts on file. But if you do happen to have an additional transcript, maybe you took some summer courses somewhere to get ahead, or maybe you had some community college time in between there, you can also upload all of your transcripts into the online application, and that'll help with the admissions review process. Those will be used for your review, and then if you're admitted, you'd have to submit any additional official transcripts to us. Now keep in mind, if you have just ASU transcripts, you won't have to worry about sending any transcripts into us. So they'll all be on file for you. We collect those ourselves, and then they'll be used for your admissions review, and then you won't have to worry about sending any official transcripts either after the admissions decision has been made. So it's really nice when you're coming just from ASU going into another ASU program, because we have all of your records on file, we're familiar with your education, and it really helps streamline the process for you. All right. So like I talked about, there are a few different departments that set requirements. So Admission Services has their own set of requirements. The three things that we actually set the requirements for are going to be number one, you have to have earned a bachelor's degree or higher from a regionally accredited institution in the U.S. So number one, if you're coming from ASU, you've already got that checked off. Number two, we require that you've earned at least a 3.0 in your undergraduate studies, in your last 60 credit hours of your undergraduate studies, which is kind of hinky. Some people don't really understand what that means, but when a department reviews you for admission, they're not reviewing your entire GPA, they're reviewing your last 60 credit hours of your undergraduate GPA. So in a standard four-year program, they would be looking at your last 2 years, essentially, like your junior and senior year. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, a lot of students may not be as serious about their studies when they're in their freshman, sophomore years. Maybe they aren't taking it as seriously because they're new and they don't really understand the coursework or whatever it may be. Number two, also, the last 2 years of your undergraduate program are much more degree specific. They're not a lot of those gen eds and those kind of things. It's going to be courses that are really heavily related to your degree program. So that's why programs want to review those last 60 credit hours most, because that really rounds out who you are as a student more than your entire bachelor's degree would. So the third requirement that we set is English proficiency. Of course, we'll touch on that a little bit later, but those are the three things that we set in my department. Everything else for admission is based on your department. So when I mention, step number one is filling out your online application, before that, I hope you have already spoken to your program of interest, because that is definitely the first thing you want to do when you're even thinking about a graduate program, especially if you're looking at a PhD. If you're thinking about a graduate level degree of any kind, you really need to work with the program that you're applying to make sure you understand exactly what their admissions requirements are. And on the screen here are some of those things that I'm referencing. So the supplemental materials are all optional items that your program may or may not require. So these are, on the left-hand side, are the most common things you'll see. First of all, personal statement or statement of purpose that is very commonly requested from most of our departments at ASU. They really want to see how you present yourself on paper, how you present yourself to a committee. Also, letters of recommendation, very common. Typically, you'll see 3 letters of recommendation requested. It can be more, can be less, can be optional sometimes, and we'll cover that a little bit more closely as well. Also, standardized test scores. That's very common. Obviously, right now in COVID world, this is not as much of a requirement. It's being waived in some cases, but we have been accepting the GRE at home test for programs that still do require the GRE score. That's something to think about if you're in your junior, senior year of your undergrad. You really need to be making sure that you're taking the GRE if that's required of your program. So reach out to your program right away. Make sure you understand if they have any standardized test score requirements, because you really need that time to prep and take the test. And if if you're concerned about if you're a good test taker or not, maybe you want time to take it once or twice even. So that's a really good thing to start thinking about now. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a few items that could be required of your program, but just really depends. Sometimes programs would like a resume or a CV to learn a little bit more about your professional background, educational history, and things like that. A portfolio is sometimes required, or even a writing sample, depending on if you're looking into more of an English-based program or a performance-based program. Those are going to be different requirements for some of those types of programs. But if everybody's considering engineering, those aren't as common for sure. All right, so any questions so far, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just keep going through this and we'll have a big Q&A at the end too. So one thing I definitely want to touch on is the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose. Like I said, this is going to be required of almost every program at ASU more often than not. So it's something to start thinking about, because it's amazing how easy it is and how quickly we forget all of our accomplishments and things that we've achieved and things that we've completed in our undergraduate degree. It's amazing how easy it is to kind of just forget all those things that you've done. So it's really key to start making a list of all these things that you're doing during your bachelor's degree right now. Start writing them down. Maybe like this, write down the program that you're a part of, write down any clubs that you've been maybe a leader in, or maybe any research that you have done, or any awards you've won, anything like that, anything that essentially you can brag about yourself with. You want to write that down and keep a log of all these things that you want to include in this personal statement or statement of purpose, because it's going to make it that much easier when it comes time to write that letter, write that statement, especially if you know the program you're wanting to go into. If you have some great research you've done that really pertains to the program you're applying to, that's what you want to include in these kind of statements. So a personal statement is a lot more informal, I would say. It's your chance to describe to the committee why you think you would be a good fit in this program. Why are you applying to that program, very simply put? What do you want to do with this degree? What do you have as your career aspirations? What is this going to do for your career goals? How is this going to help propel you into the field that you want to be in? So this is your time to really talk about you, and this is, like I said, their time to kind of brag about all these great things that you've accomplished, things that are going to set you apart from that admissions, from the rest of the students applying for admission, right? You want to make yourself memorable and make sure that there is something that the committee is going to be able to latch on to really figure out who you are as a person. Because they're not going to be meeting you in person. There's no interview. There's no time for you to chat with them and really get to, plead your case, essentially. This is your time. This is your chance to make sure they understand why you'd be perfect for this program. The second option is a statement of purpose that could be required instead of a personal statement in some cases, which is a lot more formal. This is going to be more research driven. This is a statement of you telling the program about your research goals, how you could be a good fit for their program, what you could contribute to their program in their research. A lot of times for PhD programs, you might see this more commonly because PhD is very research driven. So this is something that you want to consider if that's what you're looking into. So it's going to be more about you talking to what you can do for that program more than just speaking about yourself and your own goals and ambitions. You definitely want to include that in the statement of purpose, but however, it's going to be a lot more formal, like I said. Some programs do offer a layout or kind of a guide for what they're looking for in their personal statement or their statement of purpose. So it's something really to check on ahead of time before you start writing this. Some programs offer like a downloadable PDF or something that's just got some, prompts and maybe like word limits and things like that. So each program can really vary on that document, on what they're looking for in that statement. But like I said, the sooner the better for all of these things. The sooner you start, the better. All right, moving on, letters of recommendation. This is also very commonly requested from a lot of our programs. A statement of purpose and the personal statement are your chance for you to make yourself shine, for you to stand out. Letters of recommendation is a chance for other people to do that for you. This is essentially their time to make you stand out, make you really shine to the admissions committee and make them understand exactly why you should be admitted into this program, what you've done, what you've completed, what you've accomplished. The sooner you start thinking about these letters of recommendation, obviously it's going to be so much better for you. First of all, you can start reaching out to these professors now when you still have, day-to-day communication with them, or maybe you've just finished a class with them and they can remember you really well, or maybe you're currently working in their lab, something like that. This is the time to start kind of preparing them for, I might be, applying to grad school in the fall. Could you be a letter writer for me? Especially if you're asking an ASU professor, they're very familiar with this process. So that's definitely something to start thinking about now. Think about who you've just done a really stellar job with, who you've worked for, who you've, maybe somebody you've met with in their office hours time and time again, and they can remember your work very well. You want somebody who can speak to you not just on a general level, because I have seen some very general letters of recommendation, and that definitely does not help your case. You want somebody who can absolutely say, like, these are the things that this person has accomplished. This is why I love working with them or having them as a student. Most programs are going to be looking for letters of recommendation from an academic source. But some will accept professional letters. So maybe you've had an internship or a job on the side that you think would really help speak to you as a student or your career path. And that's fine too, as long as your program approves it. Some programs, like I said, will only accept academic letters, but some are willing to take both academic and professional. The letter writers are going to get a link sent to them. Once you fill out the online application, you give us their name and email address, and we're going to send a link to them via email for them to upload their letters for you. There's also going to be some questions on there, some open-ended questions and some ranking questions where they will rank what percent of communication you have, or in the top 10% of your class, or whatever it might be. So they're going to have some rankings and some open-ended questions, as well as be able to submit that official letter. So it can be a little bit time-consuming. So you definitely want to give them as much time as possible to start working on this letter for you. So they can have it all prepared and they can submit it whenever you submit your application. Especially if you feel like you're getting a little bit closer to the deadline, you don't want to be asking them the day before, and then they're bombarded and they feel rushed, and then they're not going to write you as good of a letter as they could. So like I said, start thinking about at least 3 recommenders that might be a good option for you, and who would really speak well to your educational background. I also say it can't hurt to provide them with maybe your statement of purpose or even your resume. That'll kind of help remind them of all the things that you've done, your history, your education, your academic work, all those kind of things that maybe they aren't quite as familiar with, or maybe they've forgotten in the time that maybe you took a course with them your freshman year or whatever it might be. And they just need to be reminded of the things that you've done. So it can't hurt to also provide them that information so that they can make sure that they are also speaking well to the things that they've seen you accomplish. All right, so standardized tests. These are just an example of the ones that we accept at ASU. Departments can make the determination about what tests they will accept because the standardized tests are departmental level requirements, part of those supplemental materials. The most common one we see is going to be the GRE. Of course, we do accept other ones. So if you're applying for a business program, they do accept the GMAT or GRE. Obviously, if you're looking into law school or something like that, most of you, I'm assuming, are looking into engineering programs, and so you would be looking at taking the GRE. Right now, there are some waivers for the GRE, and there are some exceptions for the GRE tests. Of course, I can't speak to what's going to be happening for spring and fall of next year. We're moving forward with everything hopefully going on as normal, so we can just hope that things will be kind of back to a state of normalcy as much as it can be. So it's just a good idea to start preparing for those. There's free online practice tests. There's practice tests you can pay for. There's books you can buy. There's flashcards you can get. There is no end to the amount of preparation you can do for the GRE test. Always find out the required score before you start taking this test. Understand exactly what's required of you, what needs to be achieved, if it's just an overall score, or maybe they want to see different scores on each section. Make sure you understand that, because especially when you're taking those practice tests, it's going to really help gauge you and see how much more studying do I need to do, or do I feel prepared? And that's going to really help you get the best score possible. I always say allow time to take it at least twice if you feel like you might need that time, especially if you're taking those practice tests and you really aren't where you need to be for that GRE score for your program. You're going to want to allow yourself time to take it again. So you don't want to be, stressing yourself out if you don't have the required score right by the deadline. You want to make sure this is done well ahead of time, because these scores stay good for 5 years. It's not like it's a test that you have to submit within a few months of taking it. 5 years you have to take this test. You could take it right now and it'd still be good for whenever you apply to another program at ASU. So definitely something to think about. Depending on if any of the students in this group are international, or if you studied in another international institution, it really is just going to depend on your English proficiency. Some of you may have had to provide English proficiency before coming to ASU. It just really depends. However, I will say if you've already earned a degree at ASU, nobody has to worry about English proficiency, because that already knocks that out. That's automatically just waives English proficiency requirement for you. So if anybody has more questions about English proficiency, we can always cover this more if you want to put them in the chat. Otherwise, it probably won't be valid for any of you guys here. All right, so transcripts, like we talked about. Transcripts, when you're coming from ASU as an undergraduate student, we're going to have all of your transcripts on file for you. It's really nice. It makes it really simple. You don't have to actually go to the registrar and request that they're sent to the grad department. That doesn't need to happen. What we'll do is we'll just pull your transcripts from this system. We have all your records already on file, and we'll submit them to your program when they do the actual admissions review. So you won't need to worry about sending anything into us unless maybe you finished your bachelor's degree and you went and took some courses at another institution before you applied to ASU. Then yes, you definitely need to submit those transcripts to us. Essentially, if it's any work that you completed at the college level that you haven't reported to ASU, then you'll need to submit those. Or if you took some extra college summer courses somewhere just to kind of brush up your knowledge, definitely you'll want to send those to us. We do also have some students that transfer in. Maybe they leave ASU and go to another master's program and they realize they want to transfer back. You would need to submit those transcripts to us at that time. Otherwise, if all you have is your academic history from ASU, you're good to go. It'll all be in, it'll all be on file for you already. Okay, so if you guys want to take a minute and kind of type into the chat when you're thinking about graduate school, whether it's going to be fall 2021 or beyond or spring or what you're kind of thinking, then we can kind of gauge our conversation based on the timeline estimation. If a lot of you are thinking about fall starts, that's the most common, then that'll be pretty easy for us to kind of go over a fall timeline. I will say that not every program starts in spring and fall. A lot of our programs may only start during the fall because of their cohort sizes or things like that. So it's something to also check with your department about. Make sure you understand when do you actually offer start dates. Some students might want to start right away in the summer or something like that, and there might be an option to take some courses to summertime. But most often you're going to be finding a fall start for students. So if that is the case, if you are looking to do a fall start, obviously first thing you do is just determine what you want to apply to, right? What are you doing right now? What are you interested in? Do you want to keep going with the degree, field that you're in, or do you want to do something different? If you want to do something different, definitely now is the time to figure it out, right? Before you go and study it for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. So determine what you want to study and then contact that program directly. Make sure you find out all those supplemental material requirements, deadlines, things like that. They set all the deadline requirements, all the GRE test score requirements, all that kind of stuff is set by the department. So you want to make sure you do your research really well before you go into the application process. So review those requirements, make sure you know, do I need to start working on letters of recommendation, or is this waived for my application, or whatever it might be, so you'll feel best prepared. Then finding transcripts. You don't really need to worry about this too much because you guys are going to be coming from ASU, so you won't need to even worry about checking on your transcripts. I will say that the fall application is open now. It opens September 1st, so fall 2021 apps are coming in, and a lot of those priority deadlines are going to be in December of this year. So if you do happen to be thinking about fall 2021 admission, now is the time to really be collecting these materials because, like I said, the application is open, and within a few months, you're going to see the very first round of priority deadlines. And it's always better to get in by the priority deadline than the secondary or third deadline or the final deadline. Always the priority deadline is going to be better for any application. Start updating your resume now. You guys are currently in school, you might be working, whatever it might be. Keep this up to date. Always keep your resume up to date because, like I said, it's easy to forget all those extra things you've done or where you might have worked or the dates for this job or whatever it might be. Just keep it up to date as often as you can, maybe every 6 months. Just review it and see and make sure that everything is looking good. You never know when somebody might all of a sudden want your resume and you are scrambling to update it because it's been 3 years or whatever it might be, and you really just want to make sure that that's current. Then start working on that personal statement or statement of purpose. Like I mentioned, if you have your resume to go off of or your CV, maybe you have a list of those accomplishments, or maybe you just want to go back through, even sometimes if you just go back through like your camera roll on your phone, see what events you participated in, things like that, and just start really putting together ideas or even an outline for that personal statement or statement of purpose and find out what is really going to be the core of your statement to this program and what's going to make you stand out to them. Then once you've got those kind of things accomplished, start thinking about submitting your application. Now, 2 ways. You can either make sure you get all your GRE scores before you submit your application, or you can submit the application first. Either way is fine. You do not have to have all of your application materials into us before you submit the application. So you don't have to worry about having the GRE in right away. You can submit the app, get transcripts, whatever else you need in, and then submit the GRE scores to us later. But just be mindful that your application will not be reviewed until every single item is submitted to us. We will not pass it on to your department until every item is checked off of that list. So if you think, oh, I'll get this in because they can start reviewing me, it just doesn't work like that. They want to review you as a holistic student. They want to review all of your materials at once and make your admissions decision based on that. So then you want to start thinking about taking those practice tests like we talked about, studying for the GRE, taking the practice tests, doing flashcards, maybe finding a partner to meet up with and quiz each other and just get a little better feel for what the tests and the questions are going to be like, because the GRE is different than any test you take in school, right? It's so comprehensive and covers so many topics. You really just have to be ready for anything, essentially. And get your test scheduled once you feel prepared, or even set your test date a few months out and know what you're working toward. Know that, okay, by November, I have to be really prepared. I have to do this, this, and this. And then you have more of a realistic goal to work toward. Start collecting those references. You want to start getting those references all together. Make sure that you have them in your back pocket. Know that this person's going to be writing me this letter and this person, and maybe this person can't do it anymore because they've gotten too busy, or maybe they're unresponsive. You want to have that backup recommender prepared so that you can make sure that they get those letters in by the deadline, because those also have to be submitted by the deadline for the program. Then finally, in November, you can make sure that you've taken that GRE test, because like I said, those priority deadlines are going to be in December for a lot of these programs, especially with engineering. And then make sure that you keep studying if you need to take another test. Make sure that you study again, take another test, and get to that score that you really need to get. Some students will get the minimum score and then take it again and then just submit a new one, even if they've already got one that met the requirement. If they want to take it again and just get an even higher score, then maybe they'll be kind of pushed to the top of the pile if they've got a really standout GRE score. So it's something to consider. You don't have to just stop when you get the minimum. You could always submit an updated score to us, and we'd add it to your application packet for review. Are we good? Any questions so far? I don't see anything in the chat right now, so stop me if I missed something. But if you are looking towards spring, this timeline is going to be fairly similar. However, obviously, you don't need to be as pressured to get in yet, because spring will be not until January. So a lot of those priority deadlines are going to fall if you're looking for like spring of 2022. We're kind of moving toward now, because spring 2021, those applications are all wrapped up. And some programs may still be admitting if people are looking to get it at the last minute. I don't prefer to do things last minute like that, but if you are like changing your gears and thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to get in for spring 2021, reach out to the program first and find out if they're doing any deadline extensions first, and find out if it's worth trying for spring 2021. Otherwise, start looking forward to fall 2021 or beyond. So yeah, your timeline would look very similar. You want to give yourself at least 3 months before the deadline to get all of your materials in. That's my recommendation. Some programs might even recommend longer. It really just depends. But 3 months is a good chunk of time to really give you that opportunity, like I said, to get your standardized test scores, get your practice tests done, all that kind of stuff, collect letters of recommendation. And it just allows for anything that might go wrong. A letter just doesn't get submitted, or somebody, is unresponsive, or your statement of purpose, you just can't figure it out and you really need something to, write about. It really just allows you so you're not pressured to get things in under the gun. All right, so this is an example of my ASU page. I won't go over this much because all of you should have on my ASU page, obviously. What's nice is when you start your next degree program at ASU, you'll keep the same My ASU, the same email, the same ID, all that kind of stuff will stay there. You'll still have it on. You'll still have your old program listed in the My Programs box, and it'll show your completion. You'll still be able to track all of your grades from your previous education, your previous years at ASU, and then it'll start moving into your next semester. It'll act very much like your My ASU does now. Your academic advising will be posted there for you to find your academic advisor, and it'll also have a link to what we call the IPAWS. So that is your individualized plan of study that is used at the graduate level. You work with your academic advisor to make sure that your IPAWS is always up to date, that you're taking the courses you need to take, you're working towards your graduation date, and it also helps manage and track your previous degrees that you've earned as well. So kind of like your whole education in one little snapshot, which is really nice for our students. All right, so paying for college, we do like to touch on this a little bit because funding for your graduate degree is a lot different than the undergraduate degree. There's no grants, unfortunately, at the graduate level through the FAFSA, so you can still definitely fill out the FAFSA, and we do recommend doing that because if you want any scholarships from ASU, we definitely have to have your FAFSA on file, so keep doing your FAFSA. It just can't hurt. You don't have to take out the graduate student loans if you don't want them. That is all that they offer is loans. So if you don't want the loans, that's totally fine. We just need to have your FAFSA on record. So if you do want like a scholarship or something from ASU, we can still disperse that to you. We would just need your FAFSA record on file. You can still use the scholarship portal just like any other, just like as an undergraduate student, and you can still follow all those guidelines for filling those out. Other things that you might want to think about at the graduate level are TA and RA positions. So this is either a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship. These assistantships are really key, and some students end up getting full funding for their entire education through these assistantship positions. So you're either working in a lab with a professor or working in a classroom with a professor, essentially. This can cover your tuition, housing, living stipends, all those kind of things can be covered if you're lucky enough to get accepted to one of these positions. That's something to ask about ahead of time too, because a lot of programs want your application for funding in with your application for admission at the same time. So that would be a good idea to start reaching out and finding, if funding is really key for you and going to make the decision on whether or not you're going to apply, you want to ask about how many spots are available, what funding they offer, and things like that. We do also, mention either if you're employed right now, possibly employer education benefits. We do accept military funding, and also private loans are kind of like a last resort. If you've, exhausted all of your other options and you can't, maybe you didn't get enough loans to the FAFSA or whatever it is, private loans are something to consider, but always do your reading, check up on all the fine print and understand, when do you have to start paying it back? What is the interest rate? Does the interest rate change after I've had it for a certain amount of time? And really understand the fine print on those, because we never want a student to get into a bad situation where they, they can't afford their loan and they can't afford school, because that just doesn't end up good for anybody. All right, last but not least, this is how to contact my office. We are just the graduate admissions office. We work with, like I said, all of master's and PhD level students. You can email GoGrad for any questions you have. We'll be happy to answer your questions if it's something admissions related, or if it's program specific, we'll go ahead and get you directed to the right department. But we're always a good first point of contact, because we can just really get you directed to any department that you might need to reach out to for scholarships or funding or, deadlines, whatever it might be. We can just really get you pointed in the right direction and make sure that you don't get lost, because it can be a lengthy process and can be a very involved process with many departments and many moving parts. So if ever you have questions after this presentation, that's the email to reach out to for sure. So I'm going to open it up to any questions you guys have, or if you guys just want to unmute yourselves and ask any questions, that's totally fine with me. I'd be happy to answer anything you have in the next few minutes here. Otherwise, you guys are free to go. And I know Juan said he was going to record this and have it later. So if there's anything we missed or you forgot, or you just want a refresher, or you have a friend that didn't make it, that'll be available for you guys as well.
Any questions, guys? All right, I do have one question. So when I did my application, I don't remember quite correctly, but I did have some trouble getting one of my professors to submit a letter of recommendation. And I don't remember quite well, but is there a deadline to say, okay, yeah, this professor can submit my recommendation, I want to change it?
So there's admission services will allow you to change that at any time. You can go in, there's a link on your page that says manage recommenders. And from there, you can see the status of the recommenders, change your email, or even send a reminder email. Now, of course, there's going to be a deadline for actually submitting those letters to your program. So there's no deadline for us. You can change that information whenever you would like, or you can always submit an additional letter to GoGrad if you have like an additional letter you want to add to your file after you've already submitted your initial recommenders. You can do that by just having them email GoGrad. Otherwise, you just want to make sure that you understand when the program expects to have all of those letters on file, and then that will determine, when do you feel like you need to cancel a certain recommender and ask for another one. Yeah, good question, because that is, honestly, the letters of recommendation is the thing that I see hold people up most often, because that is the one part of the application you do not actually control. Everything else is student-based. That is the one thing you do not control. It is not up to you when the letter writer decides to finally open their email and upload it, but everything else is in your control except that. So that's why you want to pick some really great people to write these letters, that you're not going to be hounding them and checking on them every day and wondering why they're not doing what you've asked. So definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
And if you guys have questions after this, if you think of them after this, that's totally fine. Just email GoGrad, and I or one of my colleagues will get back to you, and we'll get you started on the application process for whenever you feel like you want to, get applying when you've decided it's the right time.
I have another question for you as well.
Yeah.
Do you think you could give a brief overview of the 4+1 program? the advantages and like the combination experiences such as the thesis, exam, portfolio, etc.?
Can I give you a insight on what?
On the 4+1 program, just like overview on like advantages, all that stuff.
So the biggest advantage of the 4+1, number one, I always say, obviously your time. Think about like your time and your career and where you want to be. Do you want to start your career when you're earlier? Do you want to start your PhD when you're earlier? If you're really a go-get-em type of person and the 4+1 is offered to you and you feel like you can handle that amount of coursework, do it. It's a great opportunity for students. Not only do you get to get done with school when you're earlier, think about a whole entire year of tuition you are not spending. Thousands and thousands of dollars you're not spending because you are doing 6 years of education in just 5. So really there's just so many benefits to it, but it is not for everybody. It's not for everybody because it can be a lot of work. It's very stressful. It's very fast paced. There's a reason it's called like an accelerated program option. So you want to think about if that's a good option for you or not. But absolutely, if you just want to get, on with your life, if you've been in school for 18 plus years or whatever it is, and you just want to get on with your life and you are ready to take on that challenge, definitely look into your 4+1 program options because they really work seamlessly into the undergrad degree that you're in at ASU. And then, like I said, in 5 years, you've got your bachelor's and your master's, and you've saved an entire year of tuition, housing, fees, all that kind of stuff that rolls into your student year, especially at the graduate level, because obviously graduate tuition is going to be more expensive than undergraduate tuition. So it really is something to consider if your program offers that, like I said. So there are some drawbacks. Obviously, you're going to be, you're going to be a lot busier. You're going to be taking on master's work maybe a little sooner than you would have expected. So instead of continuing with undergraduate work in your last year, you'll be taking on those master level courses as well. So if you don't feel like you're prepared for those higher level courses, I wouldn't put yourself through that then, because you don't want to end up taking courses too soon that you're just not academically prepared for, and then not doing as well academically as you could if you did the standard 2-year program. But yeah, there are advantages and disadvantages to both options, I would say. And the first thing you should do is reach out to your academic advisor and find out if the program is an option, and then they can talk to you about if it's a good fit for you. But yeah, it's nice to see some of you already doing your 4+1 programs. That's great.
And if no one has any questions, I'll ask another one actually. Does the application process differ in any way for a direct PhD or?
For the PhD program?
Yeah, like I'm not sure if it differs from because I know that some of my classmates have done like direct PhDs as opposed to like doing masters and then the PhDs. Is there any difference between doing that direct PhD?
I'm not 100% sure on the difference between a direct PhD and a regular PhD. Do you mean like directly from a master's program? Like when you merge your master's into your PhD?
Well, that as well, but like I know some students that have done that have gone from undergrad to PhD. But like
okay. So the application process is exactly the same. However, depending on the program, they might want some additional information from you just to really prove that you can handle a PhD program right away after your undergraduate degree. But no, as far as like the application, all those kind of things, it's all going to be exactly the same. Just like I said, the department might want just a little more assurance from you that you can handle that PhD program before you take it on, because they wouldn't want you to jump into that. And like I said, maybe fail some courses or things like that would just really kind of put you behind. So the application process, it's all the same. The review is the same. You just want to, like I said, reach out to that PhD program and find out if they do accept students straight from their undergrad or if they require the master's. Some will require a master's and some won't. So definitely reach out to the program. I feel like I say that every day, but it's always your best point of contact. Yeah, great questions.
Do you guys have any more questions or any questions at all?
Hello. If not, I'll just, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can hear you, Leslie.
I was going to ask, so I'm not entirely sure yet because I'm in my 2nd year, but I was going to ask, when do you think it's still too early to kind of look into applications right now, or do you think, I don't know, like is there do you specifically look for juniors and seniors?
No, so I would say it is obviously too early to submit your application because the term you're looking to apply to, that application isn't open yet. Is it too early to start preparing? Absolutely not. Like I said, start preparing. You can start preparing a few key things right now. Number one, GRE testing scores. If you feel like you're mentally prepared for that, you can start studying for that and take that GRE anytime you want and get one under your belt. And then you'll know if you need to kind of work on that, or if it's a good enough score, then you don't even have to worry about taking it again. You can start preparing those letters of recommendation like we talked about. Start prepping those letter writers so that they kind of have you in their head and are reminded that, you know, you might be applying to a program, and at some point down the line, they might hear from us asking for that letter of recommendation. Number three, statement of purpose and personal statement. You can always start working on those ahead of time and get those, you know, ready, because usually you apply during your junior year. So within about a year, you should be looking to complete your application to ASU. So if you're a sophomore right now and then next fall you'll be a junior, that's when you want to be submitting your application to graduate school. So you're about 1 year away. So in that year, you can really start to prepare yourself best for what you're going to be needing for that program and for that application. So it's never too early to start preparing yourself. The application might not be open, but that doesn't mean you can't start doing things now to make sure that you feel really comfortable with the application when the time comes. So you can just get that application in right when the application opens. September 1st, it opens up every year for the fall. So that's a date I always try and get people to remember. You know, September 1, every year, fall applications open up for the next year, and that's when you can start preparing and submitting your application materials. But yeah, typically junior year is when you start to apply, or senior year if you are just wanting to wait and figure out what you need to do, you know, what you want to accomplish. But junior year is the earliest you can start applying. That was a good question because everybody kind of does it differently.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before I let you all go? Luckily, you know where to find me, so.
Well, I think those are all the questions that we have.
All right.
She said,
well,
go ahead, sorry.
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining me. It was nice speaking with you guys, and definitely reference this if you have any questions, and reach out to my office for anything else we can help you with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Bye, everyone.
All right, I'll stop recording now, and thank you so much, Amy.
Okay, thanks, bye, everyone.